morning, everyone. Welcome to RBKC's Licensing Subcommittee, and thank you for attending. The hearing is being live streamed. I'm Councillor Janet Evans, and I will be chairing this meeting. The committee for this hearing comprises Councillor Laura Burns, Councillor Abdullahi Noor, and me. We are joined by Paul Phelan. Yes, there you are. Sharon Dyball is replacing Paul Phelan. Okay, Sharon. Thank you. And our legal officer, Lindsay Lemasurier. Also with us are our committee officers, Holly Weaver, Nima Mahudin, and Daniela Heel, and Tommy Hanmer. Before we start hearing this case, just a few ground rules. Please keep your microphones on mute until you are invited to speak, as only 2 mics can work at the same time. And please make sure your phones are on silent. Thank you. The case before us today is to vary a license for At Sloane, 1 Sloane Gardens, London, SW1W8EA. Now, for declarations of interest, I confirm that I have no declaration of interest to make regarding this item. Do the other members have any declarations to make? Councillor Burns?
None, thank you.
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thanks, colleagues. Now the procedure. For clarity, I will outline the procedure of this meeting, which has already been circulated with the papers. First, the licensing officer, Sharon Dyball, will give a brief outline of the application. Please, could you confirm your attendance, Sharon?
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Then I will ask the applicant's legal advisor, Mr. Alan Thomas, to present his submission. He will have up to a maximum of 10 minutes to do so. He is joined by his clients, Jane Henshaw and Tariq Nassim, as well as other professional representatives. Adrian Studd and Neil Henderson, who may be able to assist members should they have any questions. Also, Hans Hines and Caroline Kassar as well. Then questions may be asked by members of the committee, the legal officer, and the objectors of the applicant. Next, the objectors. Mr. Gary Stolken, he will present his objections. He will have up to a maximum of 10 minutes. Please, could you confirm your attendance? Yep. Thank you. Then questions may be asked by members of the committee, the legal officer, and the applicant of the objector. After this, we will ask our legal officer, Ms. Lemasurier, to deal with any further questions she may have, and she will then lead on the draft conditions session. The list of potential conditions has been circulated to all of the parties prior to the hearing. Please, could you confirm your attendance?
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Then finally, we will return to the governance team to see if any issues have been raised that we need to consider. There will be no summing up, and the meeting will end. I would like to remind you that the committee has read the papers, which comprise the main pack and the additional submissions that have been circulated to the parties. So there is no need to repeat their content. but please do draw our attention to certain points and pages. Let's get going. Sharon Dyborg, please can you outline the case for us and advise if there has been any additional documentation received?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. If I can just go through the additional documents that have been submitted, there's quite a number of them. There was an email on the 24th of September which contained 4 documents: a witness statement from Jane Henshaw, one from Tariq Nazim, the bar report from Adrian Studd, and copies of the hotel menus. There was further correspondence on the 25th of September. That was an update from Michael Sedera and an updated map to replace that is included in the papers at Appendix J. On the 26th of September, an email from Robert Green. On the 30th of September, email from Gary Stolkin and an email from John Robinson with photographs and emails, if you can confirm that you've got those additional papers, Madam.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now for the applicant's case. Sorry?
That was just
sorry.
the additional document.
So sorry. Can you just speak into the mic?
Sure.
Thank you.
There's also just a couple of points of clarification of the report before I summarise the application. On page 10 of the report, in the bound agenda, it's the second paragraph down where it refers to planning permission, reference PP 22022384. I should just state that the condition 11 in that planning permission actually permits the use of the premises between 8 a.m. and 1 a.m. It says 2300 hours in the papers. That permission was granted for 24 months in 2023 and it is due to expire on the 18th of May 2025. Another point of clarification, if I may, is in regard to the map of the premises. About 2/3 of the way down, you'll see Belgravia Mansions on the plan, which is shown as one large block. We understand that actually Belgravia Mansions actually only comprises the first part, which actually fronts onto Holbein Place. There is a red dot that is identified on the amended plan. I should just point out that that is just indicative that there are objectors within Belgravia Mansions, but it is not indicative of their location within Belgravia Mansions, and we understand that they do in fact front onto Holbein Place. I'll just quickly summarise the application for you, Madam. So the hearing today is to consider the application from Sloane Gardens Hotel for the variation of the premises licence for at Sloane 1 Sloane Gardens. Although the address is 1 Sloane Gardens, the hotel extends into the neighbouring premises at numbers 2 to 6 Holbein Place. The premises are currently licensed for the sale of alcohol to the general public for consumption both on and off the premises from 8 a.m. until 11 p.m. daily, the sale of food and drink and alcohol and the provision of film exhibitions, live and recorded music is permitted 24 hours a day for hotel residents and their bona fide guests. This application is seeking to extend the hours for the sale of alcohol and to permit late night refreshment to the general public in the lower ground floor bar and the 6th floor restaurant until 1 a.m. The application has attracted 39 objections from local residents living in Sloane Gardens and Holbein Place, and a summary of the main points of objection can be found within the officer's report. Copies of the objections are attached as Appendix C. 6 letters of support have also been received from residents in Sloane Gardens, and these are summarised again within the officer's report with copies attached as Appendix D. No representations have been received from any responsible authorities. However, as an informative for the committee, both the lower ground floor bar and the 6th floor restaurant are subject to planning conditions which restrict the use of these areas to 1 a.m, and that is for a limited period until the 18th of May 2025, after which time the permitted hours revert back to 11 p.m. in accordance with the original planning permission. It is of course open to the applicant to apply for further planning permission to extend the hours for these areas at any time. I've nothing further to add at this stage unless you have any questions. Thank you.
Can you just clarify for us, is the application temporary, permanent? Because there seems to be, it's not clear in the application.
The application itself does not request a time-limited extension, but you may wish to seek further clarification from the applicant.
Thank you.
Do you wish me to deal with that point now, ma'am, just to set the stall out in terms of whether it's permanent or temporary?
That's fine, that would help us a lot, actually.
Pleasure. Chair, the answer is that the application for the variation is not time limited. And the reason we've done it that way is that it's subject to planning. So, as you've heard, the 1 a.m. use for non-residents and guests, so residents and guests is a 24-hour consent under the licence, and indeed planning. The planning was varied recently to extend the time that customers, members of the public, effectively non-residents, can be on the premises until 1 a.m. and that permission expires on the 18th of May 2025. So there will need to be an application to renew that planning before that date, because on the 18th of May 2025, unless the planning is extended, the hours revert back to 11 o'clock. Now the relevance of that to the licence is that if that planning is not renewed in May 2025, we are bound by the planning. So if the planning reverts back to 11 o'clock in May next year, for all intents and purposes, so does the licensing. So we can't, because we can't use it, we would be in breach of planning. So that's why we haven't made the license temporary in duration, because in effect it's controlled by the planning.
Okay, I'm happy with that. I'll ask our legal advisor if she's happy with that.
That's absolutely fine. They're entitled to do that.
Committee, are you happy with that? Okay, thank you. Now, Mr. Thomas, please can you advise if there have been any amendments to your application?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Now, can you present your submission? You have up to 10 minutes to do so.
Chair, thank you. These premises are a luxury 5-star hotel of the most exceptional quality and character. There are 30 keys, 48 covers in the restaurant and 60 covers in the basement bar. So these are small capacities. Both entrances, one on Sloane Gardens and one on Holborn Place, both have direct line of sight exit to Sloane Square, where the taxis park and where the tube is. Between 11 o'clock and 1 a.m, egress for non-residents and their guests is by Holborn Place. And the reason we say that is that the vast majority of the objections are from Sloane Avenue, because that seems to be more residential. We have a very comprehensive and effective dispersal policy, which is also a condition of the licence. We have a neighbours policy, and we take all complaints and suggestions very seriously indeed. We also offer a contact number of the duty manager 24 hours a day, if that might be helpful. As you've heard, the application is effectively subject to planning, and we seek to replicate that today. In the time since planning has been granted, we've had and operated no less than 17 temporary event notices, all of which have taken place either up to or beyond the terminal hours. So some were till 3 o'clock when there was a specific private party, but the majority have been until 1 o'clock, which of course is the hours of the planning. And there have been no incidents and no complaints apart from one in May, which we understand may have been more of a misunderstanding as to whether the terrace was licensed. So the terrace is on the lower ground floor. We are not seeking to extend that. We would be happy with the condition in line with planning that the lower ground floor terrace is not used after 10 p.m. It just means at least we've got some wiggle room for where we take smokers. The issue is effectively in terms of customers leaving the premises. As you've heard, we have a window where we egress via Holborn Place away from the residential. You'll be aware, of course, Chair, that as a 5-star hotel, we sell sleep. I wouldn't say our primary concern, because we are concerned about the residents as well, but we're also concerned about our own residents and that they get a good night's sleep as well. Mr. Studd's report, I'm not going to read it all out, but essentially on the 2 nights that he visited and observed the area, he's a retired police chief inspector, he observed no negative impact and no issues with parking from our clients. Can I deal with the specific issue of parking and patrons leaving? Of course, parking itself isn't a licensable activity, but no doubt planning would have taken that into account. There is a taxi rank on Sloane Square. I think it's got 9 bays. Our staff, we have SIA staff on the Holborn Place exit after 8 p.m. and they direct customers who want a taxi to Sloane Square. Tarek is also having conversations with Uber so they can put a pin on Sloane Square rather than on Holborn Place or Sloane Avenue, geofencing effectively. We escort our customers if they wish to be taken to a taxi, and we wait with those customers until it's safe for them to go home. In terms of customers driving to the premises, not many drive to the premises. There is the occasional chauffeur. We tell all of our guests and visitors not to park on either the residence bays or the double yellow lines, and that's something that we monitor and we will continue to monitor. There is a representation, as you've heard, from Holborn Place itself and Belgravia Mansions. That's a little way down the road, about halfway down Holborn Place. We are not aware that any of our guests park there. Sloane Square itself, of course, is a busy hospitality location. We're not saying it's not our guests, but we're not aware that it is. As you've heard, we do take active measures to make sure, or try to make sure, that our guests don't park on residential bays, etc. Mr. Studd, indeed, when he carried out his 2 observations, did not observe any of our guests parking or causing a disturbance in that way. The planning is relevant in that respect because they obviously have taken it into consideration, and the planning officer's report said this: a noise assessment has been made and the council's environmental health team agreed with the conclusions that the extension of hours would not unduly affect the nearest noise receptors. You'll note unusually there is no representation from the environmental health team. Mr. Mahaffey is usually quite keen to make representations. On this occasion, he's satisfied that the proposals will not impact on public nuisance. Chair, we also agree the condition that after 11 o'clock, smokers will be limited to 10 persons. It's 15 up till 11 o'clock. There are existing conditions on the licence which complement everything I've said. I won't read them out, but they're conditions 13, 15, 16, 18, 19 and 29. 29, of course, being adherence to the dispersal and management plan, which, if there are comments, they can be taken on board, and dynamically the dispersal plan can be improved. So, Chair, in summary, following the grant of planning permission extending the use for non-residents and guests until 1 o'clock, we ask effectively for you to mirror that. We will be going back for planning in May 2025, and of course if planning isn't granted, you've already heard in my initial submissions that effectively would curtail the licence in that way. It just means that we don't have to play ping pong between the 2 regimes if we are re-granted planning at 1 a.m. And of course there is the ability for licence review, which I'm hoping you will never hear those words again in the context of these premises. So, Chair, essentially the representations relate to the departure of patrons. You've heard what we say about how we're going to manage that both now and going forward. We do have SIA on the door. What you'll notice, unusually, there are letters of support from some local residents as well. And I just want to read out a couple of snippets because it's important how some local residents feel that we actually bring some further safety to the area rather than necessarily causing a nuisance. So one says that we add a high level of security to the neighbourhood. The doormen are very friendly and helpful and security conscious. Another says, I feel safer getting back to the neighbourhood with the porters always around. The porters being, of course, above and beyond our SIA staff. I'm told, in fact, that our security have detained 2 phone thieves recently. So I hope that adds to the positive picture that we bring to the neighbourhood. Chair, the hours have already been approved under planning. I'm not saying that you're bound by planning, but it is an indication as to how your colleagues have found that the premises operate. And they've demonstrated that they can successfully and without nuisance operate under temporary event notices till the later hours, and that has been observed and confirmed by Mr. Studd. There is, of course, some protection for the interested parties that if planning is not renewed in May, then of course we are subject to whatever hours planning may decide to grant when the time comes. Chair, we have representatives from Cadogan and the hotel, and Mr. Studd and Mr. Henderson, who's from the planning consultancy, to answer any questions you may have. I'm not sure if I've gone over, but if I did, thank you for your patience.
You've been very good. You still have another minute.
I won't take it just yet, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we'll have some questions from the committee. Councillor Burns, do you have any questions?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Could you just sort of go over the capacity again, because I kind of missed the numbers.
No, sure. Can I bring in Tarek here? Tarek is the hotel manager. So Tarek, 6th floor rest. So on the 6th floor, we only have 2 distinct licence areas. The whole of the hotel is obviously licensed for residents, etc. We have a 6th floor restaurant. How many covers do you have on the 6th floor?
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, committee. So there are 46 seats across 18 tables in the 6th floor restaurant.
And
the bar is on the lower ground floor and is around 60 seats.
And in terms of the terrace?
The terrace has 5 tables, of course mainly used during the summer months, and there are around 12 seats which are stationed out there on a permanent basis.
Thank you. I have a couple more. So you say you have SIA security helping with dispersal. Could you run us through the plan of dispersal, so how it actually works? You say after 8 p.m. you chaperone people to taxis and so forth, but could you give more detail?
Perhaps I could answer that question. So it's indeed true that we have the doors both covered, the main door on Sloane Gardens and the door on Holbein Place. The bar opens and we use the door on Holbein Place from 6:30, which is when planning begins for that door. Whilst the bar is open, we always have an SIA door supervisor licensed person from a very well-respected security agency who we partner with, and they are there present until the very last guest or customer is allowed to enter the building, and indeed stay on until much later whilst the bar is still having guests, either resident or non-resident, present. When guests leave the premises, they are often directed towards the taxi ranks, most often in fact. A very small percentage of our guests who attend the bar drive or choose to drive to the premises. When we offer the taxis, often guests would like to be escorted, but oftentimes they may not, and they prefer to find the taxi ranks themselves. If the door supervises the SIA licensed individuals, as well as the supervisors in the bar and the bar manager, try to be very diligent in terms of the egress of guests and customers from the bar door in order to minimize disruption to residents, local residents. We encourage guests to leave immediately the area and not to congregate, loiter, or anything else after they've left the bar.
Thank you. And then, what other security measures do you have, just so we have an idea? So obviously you have 2 SIA badges. Is there anything else? Do you have CCTV? Do you have any other security? Yeah.
As standard on a nightly basis, we have 2 SIA members of staff or agency staff in the hotel. One covers the main door from 8 p.m. until 8 a.m. The other 12 hours of the day are covered by our in-house doorman, who my colleague has referred to earlier on. And then the SIA license coverage starts on the bar door from 6 o'clock, which is when we first normally allow guests into the bar, and stays, as I mentioned, all the way through until the end of the bar operation. During quieter days, we sometimes have an 8-hour shift on the bar door, which fully covers the operation of the bar. But in busier times, when the hotel's at higher occupancy, we in fact have 2 SIA licensed officers for the 30-bedroom hotel for 12 hours. So that's 24 hours of coverage, 2 people overnight.
How about non-SIA staff? So porters, front of house staff, etc. How many staff would you have on duty front of house at any particular time?
Overnight, we would ordinarily have a night manager every night of the year, and for the vast majority of the nights, in fact, moving forward, we don't intend ever to have a situation where there's not also a receptionist in place. So there's 2 people in the reception. There's always at least 1 bar supervisor present, often, especially on busier nights and the weekends, there's a bar manager present 5 days a week as normal.
Okay, I've just got 2 little bits and then I'm out. So the first one is, do you do a staggered exit, and how do you monitor your security? Are fully aware that they should be doing that? Yeah, for noise purposes and whatever. You can answer in a minute. And then the second one is the lower ground floor. You said that it would close at 10 p.m. so that to minimise noise. Is that already happening, or are you planning on doing that after today?
Thank you. The dispersal policy is something which all of the members of the food and beverage team are trained on, as well as the reception team, since they're very close in terms of where they work in the building to the bar exit and indeed the front door of the hotel on Sloane Gardens. And in that plan, the dispersal plan, is highlighted the importance of ensuring that guests leave the hotel in as much of an orderly way as we can ensure happens, and gradually, as opposed to leaving in large groups. My colleagues already mentioned that it's a small bar. It's 60 seats in total. We don't normally have large parties. This is parties of 2, 4, 6 people perhaps who come for drinks, and they often leave together. It's not normal with such a small bar that a large number of people will be leaving the bar all at one point. So we're quite fortunate being of a smaller scale. And the second question, sorry, do you mind repeating it?
So earlier you said that you would close the doors at 10 p.m. Have you been doing that, or are you planning on doing that subject to this?
We have been doing that, and we'd like to continue doing that.
Councillor Noor.
Thank you, Chair. My first question is, as you know, the applicant, in this borough we have a midnight policy. Can you explain a little bit the reasons you want to open till 1 o'clock? What's the business case? Because is it demand you have seen from your customers or otherwise?
Chair, you're right about the policy. That is the norm, and of course you will always take each case on its merits. The policy isn't a after midnight. It just says that's the norm, and then you look at the application on its particular merits. In terms of the reason why we want to operate until 1 a.m, yes, there is demand for it. There aren't many places in the immediate vicinity where our patrons tell us that they can go that's safe, particularly for women. It's a very safe place. The security is exceptional. It's comfortable. It's refined. It's relaxed. It's intimate. All the place where you would want to go to have a quiet drink, to have a quiet chat without live music and such like. And we have been asked, and hence why we've been operating under temporary event notices, to offer that extra facility to our non-residents who want to come somewhere just a little bit more special, rather than going to one of the more perhaps busier premises around Sloane Square. Can you add anything more to that, Tarek?
No, just to explain that our clientele is an incredibly chic and refined clientele, and it's often driven by the type of clients who we attract to the bedrooms and the other offerings in the hotel. And they do indeed enjoy having a drink until later in the evening in a refined atmosphere.
Thank you. My second question is, do you have CCTV camera on Holborn Road. Yeah, Holborn Place, sorry.
Thank you for the question. In fact, I think I may have forgotten to answer for an earlier question. We do have 24-hour CCTV coverage, which is on an external database to the hotel, all safely and securely stored. And there is indeed coverage of the 2 Holbein Place exit.
Thank you. Chair, one more question. I mean, one of the local residents who are objectors mentioned that suggested using as a backup point Royal Court on Solana Square. Is that something you will consider?
Indeed, Chair, so sorry, I should have actually been more specific on that point. That is exactly the proposal that we are trying to adopt with Uber. The location that you've mentioned is pretty much next to the existing taxi drop-off point, the taxi rank. So yes, that is something that we are trying to arrange. And it's easier for us when all of our customers are egressing via Sloane Square. It's much more easier to manage from our point of view.
Thank you. Chair, I have no further questions.
So I know you mentioned it briefly, but can you explain about the 4 complaints? I'd like that. This is directed at Tariq as the manager.
I think there was only one complaint, and that was in May when we had a temporary event notice, and I think it was about 11 o'clock in the evening relating...
I think we had 4.
In the main pack.
In the main pack.
In the main pack.
Yes.
I'll let me have a look through the pack and I'll find them. You don't mean representations, you mean complaints?
I heard you.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's on page 97.
Page 97. Can I just look at them and come back to you on that point in
Yes.
a moment, Chair?
Okay. In the meantime, now the music. Does the music go on? I know you said you don't do live. Do you have dance music, or are people dancing at all?
I'll answer that question if I may, Chair. We have a music DNA which is brought over from Hotel Coste, which is a lounge music. So it's not a house music or a very high upbeat tempo. It's more of a loungy, chic music which is played. It's a soundtrack which is specially curated for us and runs 24 hours a day in the hotel at a lovely volume in the restaurant and the public areas.
So it's background music.
It's background music.
Yes.
And then on certain nights of the week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we have vinyl, which is played by DJs who are specially curated. But it's a small space, and so in honesty, we have no room for a dance floor. So it's not a dancey bar. I hope that answers your question, Chair.
So you're not intending to develop or evolve into a nightclub?
Absolutely not.
Right, so you're confirming that.
Thank you.
Now on food, just because in a late night bar people can get a little tipsy, you have snacks?
Yeah, absolutely, we do. We currently run a menu until 11, but we're very excited to be able to extend that hopefully before the end of this year. I would like to note also that when we applied for the 10s, some of the dates, which were just last month, I believe it was 6 individual dates, we ran a snack menu late night at Sloane, which was served right the way through until 2 a.m. on those nights. And it's exactly for that reason that it's a sit-down bar. It's where you can have a cocktail and some smoked salmon bellinis, and you can relax. So, and it's also to make sure that clients who are hungry and need to have something to nibble on, they can have that opportunity.
Good. Now, how far is it from Holbein Place down to Sloane Square?
Oh, seconds.
Okay.
It's line of sight. It's on the... I don't know if we can bring up a picture of the hotel, but it's on the apex of
Yes.
Holborn Place and Sloane Gardens. And as you turn left, you are 10
So
seconds.
it's just, yeah, so it's safe.
Yeah, incredibly safe. Well, we say safer with us there later in the evening, because of course, if we would close the, let me call it the public bar for want of a better word, at 11 o'clock, then of course we wouldn't be having security there. So we hope we bring in an additional security safeguard to the area. That area just between Sloane Square and us is where all the cycle bays are, and it's not particularly attractive, and we hope that we can work with the council to improve that in due course. I found the schedule of complaints to which you referred. Sorry, I knew I'd seen it somewhere. May I just go through them with you? And
yes, I'd like you to address
explain
them.
those.
Thank you.
Chair, the first one is a technical matter. So I think it was more of a question to planning rather than a complaint, but let me deal with that. The resident was concerned that the temporary event notice, which was until 3 o'clock, which was for a private party, was in breach of the planning. Chair, you'll probably know that 99.9% of planning applications don't have sort of non-standard times, which licensing do. And you can't get the equivalent of a temporary event notice for planning. So what tends to happen, because planning don't want to be bothered with Section 73 applications each time a premises wants to apply for a 10, the safeguard effectively is in the 10. So the planners tend to deal with these matters on a de minimis basis. In other words, it's a non-material breach. So yes, the hours are 1 o'clock, but if a premises, particularly trading under a temporary event notice, goes beyond that, it's not treated as a formal breach, generally by planning, unless there's an issue, which on this occasion we understand there wasn't. There was then a call on the 22nd of June in relation to 9:30 p.m. of loud music coming from the open doors leading to the basement. That resulted in a reminder letter being sent to us, but it wasn't witnessed by officers. Tarek, do you remember that day and what was the cause of it, if anything, and how it's been resolved?
Thank you. If I may, of the four which appear on Appendix E, the only one which, in honesty, we were notified of at the time was the complaint which happened on the 16th of May. I wish we had an earlier opportunity to hear of these complaints from the residents directly, because we would certainly have addressed it more immediately directly with them. However, when we have investigated the top three on Appendix E, we in fact had no findings, and because of therefore we were not aware of the issue having happened, we couldn't immediately marry up any incident which had occurred. But we were not aware of those complaints at the time or closer to the time of their occurrence. There was in the 16th of May, there was indeed a mistake which was made by the team who were operating the bar on that night, and there were a few people who would be let onto the terrace later than we would have liked, and the team have certainly learned from that, and there have been no further complaints as far as I'm aware on that issue. It's something which we have really taken seriously and cleaned it up.
In terms of what time do you close because the other two complaints seem to relate to the door being left open from the basement bar going onto that terrace. What time would you normally close that door? 10 o'clock. So we would normally close that door. So if it helps, so what we're proposing is that and perhaps the condition can be amended so that the terrace isn't used after 10 o'clock, and the door leading to the terrace is closed after 10 o'clock as well.
Okay, there is a discrepancy. I'll have my legal advisor mention it, please.
Not a discrepancy as such, but I think in Jane Henshaw's, either the statement or in the letter in the main pack, she says that the door's always closed at 9 p.m. and you're saying 10 p.m. So I just wonder if we could, and obviously we can discuss it when it comes to the condition session, but there's the 9 p.m. versus 10 p.m. discrepancy.
Yeah.
So it is a discrepancy.
Jane, of course, is at Cadogan and Tarek is at the is hands-on. I think there's a policy of winding down things from 9 o'clock in the evening, and a final hard stop at 10 o'clock, I think, is the answer. Yeah, I'm told that's right. Jane, did you want to pick up on that point?
Yes. Good morning, committee. Good morning, Chair. That's absolutely right. So, as Terry says, we're winding down from 9 p.m. through to a hard stop at 10 p.m. Of using that area. again, because we're very, very conscious of residents and wanting to make sure that noise and disturbance is absolutely minimal. It's really important to us on the estate that the space is used in a very respectful way to everybody, and that's part of it.
Could you speak into the mic, please?
Yeah, of course. So it's so important to us that the hotel operates in a way which is respectful to everybody who is in the area. That's residents and businesses, and we specifically selected the operator because of their background and their integrity in understanding how we wanted to work with them and how they'd fit into the estate. You know, it's been a very long building project, and we've learnt a lot over the duration of the construction and built really good, strong relationships, and this is all part of it, making sure that everybody who works and operates in the hotel is respectful of neighbours.
Thank you. Now, one last question that I have. Probably Tariq, you're best positioned to answer this. Do you tell us the flow of your business from Sunday to Saturday, please?
So, occupancy of the hotel, as well as business in the food and beverage spaces, is reasonably consistent throughout the week. However, it's for sure that there are peaks in the week, and those are normally Thursday, Friday, and Saturdays. We have occupancy, which varies, of course, seasonally for the hotel bedrooms. For the breakfast in the hotel, it's popular throughout the week, but more popular on the weekends, following normal patterns of hospitality, I would say. Lunch and breakfast, we see a lot of regular guests, dinner indeed as well, from the neighbourhood. I think we referenced in part of the pack that we have a lot of local families who come on almost a daily basis. A neighbour who, before I left the hotel to come to this meeting, was having table 22, which is their normal breakfast table, and we take the bonds with our neighbours quite seriously in the local area in Chelsea. We benefit from a really loyal crowd around Chelsea in the area. Resident guests form a large percentage of our food and beverage guests in the bar. They enjoy to go throughout their stay to the bar and also to the restaurant. But we do indeed have a lot of non-resident guests who join us in the hotel, and the vast majority of them are from the local area and still in fact discovering us, because part of the DNA of the hotel is for it to be a very quiet, understated address, a very elegant address, operated more like a private home than indeed a hotel, which is mainly due to the scale of the property and the extremely large amount of money which was invested in the beautiful craftsmanship which has gone into the building. So that's a little bit about the flow. I hope that helps to give you a bit of an idea, but if you have more specific questions, please let me know.
Yeah, I was thinking more of the night time, like what nights will be busy in the bar, and basically, do you have any nights that are specifically more busy than others? Just to state it, I know it's often an obvious answer, but still, you said Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. What's the flow Sunday to Wednesday?
Sunday to Wednesday is normally a little quieter. It's true, our peak nights are Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But I have to say that, and it's unusual for a property which has been operating for 12 months, but we're still finding our flow, and that's why I mentioned that our DNA is to be very understated. We in fact encounter guests from the local area who've been living there and who don't know we exist. We have no signpost outside the hotel. It's very understated and discreet. And because of that, we're still being discovered by our neighbours. So the reason why that's relevant to this is because there could be busy Tuesday nights. We had a very good Tuesday night this week, the 1st of October. A lot of regular guests were there, high-spending guests, very wealthy, elegant guests who were there in the hotel, in the bar specifically. We normally see a pattern, however, which has been noticed, of aperitif, so 6 or 7 o'clock before guests join us upstairs in the restaurant, or indeed go to the many lovely restaurants around Sloane Square in the area who come for a pre-dinner drink or two. And then often we get guests who come back to us around 10 o'clock. And indeed, the councillor earlier on mentioned why the extension of the licence, and it's because we see a demand from guests who enjoy being in the restaurant, or indeed who come back after around 10 o'clock, who enjoy a nightcap or two next to the fireplace, for example, especially in the winter months, and they like to stay and linger a bit longer until after 11 o'clock. And Indeed, we saw that a lot of the trade has been lost to other places in the neighbourhood or other addresses in Mayfair because the demand is there from our guests, and we'd like to allow them to continue to enjoy a nightcap in the hotel as opposed to going elsewhere.
Excellent, thank you very much. Now, any questions from our legal officer?
Thank you. I think a lot of the questions have been answered. I'm just going to have a quick check. So you've already answered temporary or permanent. You've already justified the exception to the midnight policy. The external terrace, that is on the lower ground floor at the front of the apex. It's like a light well, I presume. Yeah, okay, fine. Okay. And you've said that Thursday, Friday and Saturday night at the moment you're still finding a flow at generally the busier times as it stands, although you did say Wednesdays as well. Tube times, can you just confirm what time the tubes close, please?
It's in the dispersal plan, but they're certainly open until 1 a.m. I'm not sure much beyond 1 a.m, but certainly until 1 a.m. I think that was the evidence.
I think Mr. Solkin can reply later on when it comes to his bit. Thank you. What other bits? You've addressed the noise complaints, you've addressed the 10s exceeding the 1 a.m. You've referred to the capacity in the bar. So I think for now, I'll wait until the conditions session. Things that you might want to talk amongst yourselves but have just cropped up just for discussion during the conditions session, in addition to what I've put, possibly having some condition, just belt and brace, confirming no nightclub use, which I think you've said will be the case anyway. I know there's been no representation from the fire authority, but perhaps a capacity limit in the bar, just to discuss during the conditions session, and subject to what the councillors think. And obviously you're asking till 1 a.m, Monday till Sunday, but your thoughts on 1 a.m. or midnight, Thursday to Sunday, just for you to talk amongst yourselves in readiness for the conditions session, but that's it for me. Thank you.
Any questions from our objector?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I do have some. Firstly, just for the record, I think the representative referred to Sloane Avenue. I assume he meant Sloane Gardens. Would that be correct?
On more than one occasion, I do indeed mean Sloane Gardens. I apologise.
Okay, thank you so much. I wanted to ask a couple of questions of the manager, Tariq. Am I permitted to do that, Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. You keep referring to seating. What is the capacity of the lower ground bar? You keep saying 60 seating, but of course people don't need to be seated.
No, they don't. I mean, we do have a waiter-waitress service policy, so the vast majority of our customers will be served by waiter-waitress service where they're seated. Remind me, is there actually a physical bar that customers can go to?
Thank you. Allow me to just explain the space a little bit. So there is a physical bar, but it is not one at which guests order their drinks. It is a dispense bar. There are no seats at the bar, and it is a couple of meters in length, and with 2 bartenders working and waitresses either side, there's physically no space for guests to stand. And because of that, therefore, we often refer to seating, because we don't have people kind of stood up, because it's very difficult for waitresses to then get their drinks to them because they're not on a table. So it's incredibly rare that a guest is not seated because there's no way for us to operationally serve them and bill them and for them to enjoy the drinks. So it's not a place where guests typically stand and order drinks.
I've been in a bar and seen people standing. It's a simple question. What is the capacity? Why will you not answer the question?
Sorry, I thought we had the...
No, you haven't answered it. You keep pivoting around it. It's a simple question. What's the capacity? You must have in your minds a number. What's the capacity of the bar?
We have 60 covers, and the evidence that you've heard is from Tariq, is that those people, our customers, are seated.
So the capacity is 60 for the bar? Is that what you're saying on the record?
I'd say so. Our fire capacity is higher, but we have 60.
What is your fire capacity?
Do you know off the top of your head?
In total, honestly, I don't know off the top of my head.
You said you've come to this hearing without knowing what your fire capacity is.
It's over 120 in the risk assessment.
The fire capacity for the bar is over 120. Thank you for eventually answering that. I know it was asked.
No.
I have the train times, the last train times from Sloane Square here. You've come to this obviously incredibly well prepared. What are the last times for the trains going east and west from Sloane Square?
So is that a question or a statement? I mean, if you have them, please
I'm
share
asking them,
I will confirm.
but why are you not sharing them?
I don't think we've got the train timetables to hand, Chair. My understanding is that they are at or around 1 a.m.
That is completely incorrect.
But
So
please,
why don't you just Google them now?
would you like to read them out and we'll confirm what?
No,
favour?
I hope, with all due respect, Chair, I hope the committee draws an inference that they're not prepared to simply say these are the times of the last trains. I can tell you they're between 5 to 12 and 5 past 12. So if you're saying I'm wrong, obviously you will produce the times. It will take you a minute to. It's just, I'm asking you, I think it's a fair question, given that you said I thought it would be around these times. I would have expected you, it's a very specific thing, it's quite binary. I think it's 5 to 12 in one direction, 5 past 12 in the other, slightly later on a Saturday night, but well before 1 o'clock. I just don't understand the lack of transparency.
Well, we're not being transparent. If you tell us.
No, I'm also talking about your transparency.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've asked the question. Thank you, Chair.
Well, I think, Mr. Stoken, you're going to speak now, so you might want to.
Yeah, I have some other questions.
Chair, may I just deal with, now we've got the train time. I hope you understand, Chair, that of course we've got a rough idea of what train times are, but we didn't have the train times to hand. We do have them now. May I tell you what they are to answer the question that I've been
Yes, please.
asked? The latest train time towards Ealing Broadway, for example, is 0043. Towards Richmond, it's 0038. And going the other way, it's slightly earlier at midnight.
Which night of the week is that?
I'm sorry, I'm not an expert on train timetables, but
I dare say the
that's all it.
committee will draw an inference that you haven't come with these. Yeah.
That's all it says. By all means, look it up yourself.
No, I have. I will present those to you later, given that they haven't.
I think the point about the tube times is this: we had based the 1 a.m. comment on the representation that said that the tubes don't run beyond 1 a.m. In fact, they run just short of 1 a.m. We've never said they run later than 1 a.m. We've never said that all of our patrons depart via tube. Some will get a taxi, some will get a bus, some might get picked up. It's a matter for you to take into consideration, obviously.
Can I ask Tarek, Chair, if you don't mind? Tarek, do you think your clientele, who you've described as exceptionally rich, do you think they will go home on the tube?
Some of them, yes. They take different forms of transportation, often taxis, Ubers, sometimes private drivers, but they're not an ostentatious crowd. It's a crowd who are more discreet, in fact, but they will take the tube. Yeah, I know guests do take the tube.
What would the commercial impact be on the business model of at Sloane if you don't get the 1 o'clock licence? What would the commercial impact be?
Well, Chair, obviously we're going to not lose money because we're only using it at the moment. But it's really part of the customer experience. Chair, I'm happy to answer questions. It is turning a little bit into a form of cross-examination. If Mr. Stolkin has any more questions, could he perhaps address them through you, and we might be able to answer them a little bit better.
Yes, we shouldn't get into a hostile environment. You will have your chance now to
Thank you.
say what you have to say. I would just like to add, pursuant to what you're saying, is it would probably be more of an issue that the staff is taking the tube home. And if so, are you controlling them so they don't make noise, screaming, yelling, singing, or smoking, and they know to leave respectfully to the neighbors to go to Sloane Square?
Absolutely, Chair. The team are all, in fact, educated or trained on our neighbourhood policy. It's part of our handbook, and everybody has signed off on that in the hotel to know that we need to show respect to our neighbours. It's also in our dispersal policy to ensure the staff are leaving quietly, and they are instructed to do so. And in fact, as far as I'm aware, there are no issues with any disturbance caused by the team. So thank you for the question.
And you can maybe make Mr. Stolken happy if you explain your training to the staff, please.
Chair, I don't require that unless you require it. But I do have one more important question that I do want to ask in relation to the 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock issue on the terrace. And I assume that, Chair, you would be prepared to take that. I should note, Chair, just as it's being streamed, that when the applicant makes their representations, you have said excellent several times. I'm sure that you didn't really mean excellent in a pejorative, in a way that might create a perceptual issue. But I know when I sat on the bench, it was a very basic thing that I didn't nod along and say excellent when someone gave their evidence, because it might create a perceptual issue. And I just mention it because you have said excellence a couple of times.
If I can just interject, I think it's just a turn of phrase that the chair's using, but we take
yes,
on board
but I'm
what you're
observing.
saying.
It's a matter of record because it's recorded, but I just do think it creates a certain perception, which I'm sure is unintended. Regarding the 9 to 10 o'clock, I have the emails here from licensing saying that their understanding was the agreement was that the terrace would be cleared by 9 and the door shut. I can show you the emails now. I'm just trying to understand where the confusion comes from. I have personally been in the hotel on several occasions at 10:30 or 11 to say there are people out on the terrace, and people have shrugged their shoulders. You've tried to paper over this I have the impression you're papering over it by saying, well, it's 9, but then it takes an hour to somehow clear it. What was your understanding of the time that the terrace should be cleared? Simply to clarify the discrepancy between what the council has written to me and what you have said. What time is the terrace meant to be clear and the door closed under the current arrangements?
The terrace closes at the latest at 10 o'clock, and we start closing it at 9 p.m. Chair, the issue of the terrace, I'm not sure if it's a red herring or not. There is, of course, we've agreed a condition at the terrace, and in fact the door will close at 10 p.m. In terms of the variation, the use of the terrace therefore isn't the subject of the variation, because the terrace hours aren't being extended. In fact, the terrace hours are being curtailed. At the moment, under the licence, the terrace can stay open until 11 o'clock for the sale of alcohol, and indeed potentially even later for residents and their guests. So rather than extending the terrace under the variation, we're actually curtailing it. I hope that helps, but I hope it answers the question as well.
So just to confirm, there's no, I mean, I did have a look through the various planning permissions and the licensing application. I couldn't see any conditions which mentioned 9 p.m, but obviously it was in James Henshaw's letter, which is where I got the 9 p.m. from. I think it was referenced somewhere else, but I can't remember where. But just to confirm, there's, and Sharon, you can, I don't know if you can confirm, that there's no definite restriction on a planning condition or on the licence which references 9 p.m. It's just in the dispersal policy or the neighbourhood policy or whatever's been agreed internally.
That's correct. The 9 p.m. came from the letter from Jane Henshaw, but we couldn't find any planning conditions, and there isn't a condition on the licence which requires it to close at 9 o'clock.
Yeah, it's right. I mean, it's a policy, and the good thing about having policies, particularly of a hotel, is that you can adjust them. So if we had a particularly full ground floor bar on a hot summer's evening, you might want to close that door at, say, 9 o'clock to mitigate the noise. If it's very quiet and there's hardly anyone in there, and you've got somebody smoking on the terrace and they're not causing any noise, you would want that flexibility to operate it till 10. So that's how we've been operating it, but we're proposing a hard stop at 10 o'clock.
Okay, we can cover this in the conditions session because obviously it's been noted as one of the conditions.
And can you just explain to us, if the doors are closed, where is your fire exit?
when I say closed, I don't mean, of course, I mean closed, safe for emergency access and egress. You can go back through the hotel, but there is a fire exit direct from the terrace as well. So yes, obviously it would need to still be maintained as a fire exit. So we'll come back to it during the conditions, perhaps.
Okay, now we'll hear the objector's case, Mr. Stolken, and you have up to 10 minutes to do so.
Thank you, Chair. And I didn't mean to overstep before, but it's obviously in my shoes. It's slightly uncomfortable to hear excellent being said to the applicants.
When I said excellent, it has nothing to do with the content. It has to do with that they've answered and we can now move on.
Okay, well, I hope I get an excellent at the end of mine as well, and thank you very much.
I shall, of course. In fact, I might get up and bow down, and then you'll be prejudiced.
No, I'm the one who should be bowing. Thank you, Chair, thank you, Committee. You're being duped. This is completely disingenuous. I'm going to explain to you why. I'm just going to start by reading you from the applicant's own material that's posted in content in various local magazines. Decadent nights await in our subterranean speakeasy where resident GJ spins a soundtrack of seductive electronic international music. The problem here is, on the one hand, the applicant's trying to tell you it's going to be a very quiet, very rich people, very discreet. But on the other hand, they're slightly cagey about saying what the capacity will be. And the reality is, my question about the business model is that this applicant developed, it's only 40 rooms, and I put it to you, it's just my opinion, it's actually quite difficult to make money out of 40 rooms unless you have a food and beverages capacity that's making a lot of money. And the 1 o'clock license was fought for very hard at the original planning application. It was denied. You will have seen from my evidence the circumstances in which, under delegated powers, the interim planning application was given to 1 o'clock, and you yourselves will draw an inference one way or the other. Why would 40 residents object to the licensing application, and yet there would be none, not a single objection to the planning application? I think I explained in my evidence how that came about. Because we didn't know about it, and that was our fault. I'm going to try and show you a couple of things that speak to the character of the applicant, because I hope that at least will shed some light. I think actions speak louder than words. The first thing I'm going to show you is, and by the way, I don't think it really makes much difference. It's not an issue to me. The applicant has no signage on leaving asking residents to be quiet. This, you see it? It's the size of 1.5 credit cards. Sorry, can you hear me? This is the size of 1.5 credit cards. It's the sign that says, residential quiet zone, please be respectful. It's so small, you would actually have to crouch down and put your glasses on to read it. Now, I don't mind, because actually the applicant's ability to do anything once people leave the premises is very limited, as I'm sure you'll know from your experience. All I'm saying, and I don't care if it's a bigger sign, all I'm saying is, if they care that much, why would you put a sign up asking people to be quiet that is 1.5 credit cards in size? Second thing I'll tell you, I just want to make sure I don't overrun on time, all this sort of talk about respect for the local community. And again, it's for illustrative purposes. The applicant started roping off public parking bays for the first 6-9 months. The council stopped it to give reserve, in effect, parking bays for its own use, which was unlawful. I don't really care, other than that it speaks to the character of the applicant. The next thing I'm going to just register is look at who they chose as their partner. They positioned it as an operator who had experience of very high-end, discreet, quiet type operations. The partner, the Cost Hotel, was of course curated and very carefully chosen because they operate a boutique hotel in Paris, which I've been to many times, with a heaving, throbbing bar in the basement, open to 3 o'clock, DJs doing live sets. It's no coincidence that they chose the operator in Paris who runs the most successful hotel with a club-like sort of environment in the bar. So all of these things, I believe, are sort of slightly inconsistent with the way this has been described to you. In terms of the disingenuous comments about we're worried about the noise for our own residents, it's soundproofed. We all live in Victorian houses, we don't have soundproofing. And finally, they can have a pin on Uber that asks Uber to go to roll call, that asks their guests to disperse. The most important thing is it's empty at the moment. It's never full. Nothing that has happened up till 11 o'clock so far is any kind of indication of what it will be like at 1 o'clock in the morning when now we know up to 120 people could be dispersing. It's a lucrative market, it's a commercial venture, they'll want to fill it, and what happens when people leave will be very difficult to control. So in summary, what you're going to do if you allow this is for very rich people, pay £26, that includes service, I said 22 in my witness statement, £26 for gin and tonic, to have that privilege so that the local residents have a significant increase in noise. And there's no public interest in doing it. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Chair, would it help with your leave if we just answered 2 of those points?
No,
Very well.
we will now have the committee will ask questions. Councillor Burns?
Yep, just a couple. Is it about the timing or the business model that is really, would it change if the timings change for you, or do you think this is just going to be a trajectory to a party venue?
I have no objection to the business model, just in principle, and I would frequent establishments like this and do. It's just the location and the impact that it will have on the local residents. Even at 12 o'clock, I mean, as I said in my statement, there are so many. I counted at least 40 in just 600 metres or so, up to 11 o'clock. The choice is huge in terms of licensed premises. Afterwards, there are very few. And therefore, my fear, and I'm sure based on the material that the establishment produces, is that it will become a destination night spot, even if it's only 100 rich people in there leaving at 1 o'clock in the morning. This is a street where you can still hear a pin drop at night. Anything, even if it was only 12 o'clock, would be a massive relief to the residents. And you'll have seen there are already people having to move their children to different rooms at that end of the street. I do take issue with the point about Holborn Place. There are a number of objectives in Holborn Place. Obviously you're very experienced in this, but if it does become full, it's empty at the moment. So nothing that's happened is in any way indicative of what it's going to be like and what the ambition is for it. If you believe that there may be 100 people there dispersing at 1 o'clock in the morning because there's nowhere else to go that isn't a club in the area, then I would ask you to draw an inference from what cars will come down Sloane Gardens and the various noises attached to that. But it's not the business model, it's just what it's going to be like at 1 o'clock in the morning if the applicant's establishment succeeds as a commercial venture. And I will say, it's said quiet music, lounge music, it's the music we play in the hotel. That is not the message they're putting out, and indeed there is a DJ there at least 3 nights a week.
Yeah, just on that point.
Sorry.
Sorry, who was that? Did someone say something? No? Okay. I heard a sorry come from somewhere. But anyway, never mind. So yeah, they do already have a DJ, they said, playing vinyl Thursday, Friday and Saturday. How is that affecting you and your neighbours?
It isn't, and I have no issue in principle with the DJ because the licence is till 11 o'clock, and actually the bigger noise issue comes from the people outside in the terrace. And by the way, I should say, if it is full and it only allows 10 people smoking outside, that's 10 people chatting and smoking in the street at 12:30. But it isn't. The DJ isn't the issue. The door can be closed. I think we can hear at the other end of Sloane Gardens, as we walk down, the noise from the terrace. But the real issue, I believe, is going to be people dispersing at 1 o'clock in the morning. A lot of these guests have their own drivers who will be waiting outside, Ubers. That's going to be the real issue. And by the way, all the promotional material has the address as 1 Sloane Gardens. Just so you're clear, I can show you, but it all says 1 Sloane Gardens.
Councillor Noor?
Thank you, Chair. We understand your concerns. Some of the suggestions, one of your residents or objectors suggesting another alternative pickup. What do you think of that? Do you think that will help?
I think an alternative pickup, if you're minded to grant the 1 o'clock license, of course it will help. Anything that can be done to mitigate the noise. But I'm somewhat skeptical about, if you're ordering an Uber from within, they can make these arrangements with Uber, but as a traveller and doing this in other cities, I know how badly it works. But it won't just be Ubers. There are a million taxi apps. There'll be people with private drivers. Indeed, the evidence of the manager was that his evidence was that people drive, a lot of our guests drive themselves, which I'm very surprised if they're frequenting a bar and they're drinking. It would help, but I don't think if we do end up with even 60 or 80 people dispersing at 1 o'clock in a street that has never had a licensed premises, which is still very quiet after 11 o'clock, at 1 o'clock in the morning, it's inconceivable that there won't be a significant impact in noise. But it would help, sir, for sure. Anything would help.
Thank you. I'm done, sir.
Sorry, I just have another one. Obviously, there's been a few tens and a couple of complaints. Have you, or do you, and your local residents that are in the same boat, actually liaise with the hotel directly, or do you go straight to complain? And if you have they responded quickly and effectively?
Well, as a resident, and certainly the residents I know, because I obviously can't speak for everyone, we weren't aware of those and only found out actually after they started. I'm not aware of any increased noise from where I live. People at the other end of the street were, and were not aware that it was a Thames, so just thought that they were in breach of the licence. But I think the point is, even the temporary event notice cannot replicate what it will be like when the establishment is able to go out and properly market itself as a 1 a.m. destination. So I don't think they did. What I do know from a resident who went in by chance one evening when they had one, when it was open to the public, was that it was pretty empty. And it doesn't surprise me. It is not busy. In general, it's pretty quiet. Because up till 11 o'clock, there's a huge amount of competition, and it's not known as a 1 o'clock venue. That will all change with a vengeance if it has a 1 o'clock license. And just to say, the fact that the planning comes up again in May, I'm sure there was an inference, well, the residents will have another chance to stop this with the planning. You can see what we're up against. This is it. And a lot of people are frightened to poke the bear. That's how they see, with all due respect, the Cadogan. And I think there's significantly more people who are very worried about this who are not prepared to come forward. Many of whom have businesses who are tenants of Cadogan, and indeed know Jane Henshaw very well, have said to me, I can't, I don't want it, but I'm frightened.
Chair, I'm really sorry to interrupt, but sometimes there are red lines in licensing, and a red line is where somebody gives evidence which is something which is pure conjecture.
No, it's not conjecture. This isn't a criminal test. Hearsay is allowed here, and I'm saying that this has been said to me by more than one person. That is my evidence.
Yeah, I actually was going to address something. Thank you very much for your presentation. You mentioned a lot of conjecture. Rich people, you assume they're rude, loud, decadent, and we need facts. And
I didn't say that, Chair.
sorry?
I did not say that. You're misreporting what I said. This is being live streamed. I did not say it. I assumed absolutely the opposite. When did I say I assumed rich people were decadent or rude? I haven't said that.
Well, you said there are rich people, you refer to them as rich people, which is an assumption. And
No,
then
I'm
you
repeating,
also,
no, I wasn't. I was quoting Tariq's description of their client base. I was quoting him. I made that very clear. I don't think rich people, well, the rich people I know in general, are very, very respectful.
exactly. So that's really the point, is that I think a lot of what you said, and you can correct me, is based on fears as opposed to facts.
No,
Can
theirs
you
is
add
conjecture.
to that?
Theirs is conjecture. They're conjecting what will happen at 1 o'clock in the morning. Theirs is not facts. Theirs is facts as what they know with an 11 o'clock license. I won't interrupt you again, but I'm sorry. That is incorrect. It's a factually incorrect summary, and it's very, very worrying because what they're saying is conjecture. They don't know what will happen at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Nor do you, do you?
I don't, but you said they were dealing in facts. Do you accept that theirs is conjecture as well as to what will happen at 1 o'clock in the morning?
Yes, I
So
do.
we have a level playing field of conjecture. Thank you.
We are, because we can only judge when we get actual complaints. You have a remedy, and we can deal with them. We can review a license, we can revoke a license, but I haven't had any facts here.
Yes, well,
I
you can
understand
draw
that
an inference. You can draw it's a judgment. If you were living in Sloane Gardens, because what you're weighing up is the right of people to go and spend £26 on a gin and tonic to 1 o'clock in the morning. A small number of people with the noise. The residents have already provided evidence that the noise is worse at 11 o'clock, but we're living with that. It is common sense. I'm a respectful, relatively wealthy person. If I leave here and get into an Uber, I know there's going to be noise. So I think it's very worrying if you're not prepared, if you're saying, well, if there's a problem, what you just said to me is if there's a problem, we'll find a remedy. I'm asking you to make a sensible judgment on what it's going to be like if 90, 100, even 60 people exit these premises at 1 o'clock in the morning, given that 40 residents, it's a very large number for a case like this, 40 residents have objected. It would be, I think, it would be a huge shock to the residents to be told that you had granted a 1 o'clock license because there are no facts to prove that it will be a problem.
Well, I think we'll deal with it when we do conditions, and
But you're saying that you've already made a
excuse
decision.
me,
You're
you
saying
listen now.
Conditions only apply if you're minded to grant the 1 o'clock. And saying we'll deal with it when we deal with conditions is effectively saying I have decided it's going to be
Okay,
a
I'm
1
going to
o'clock
close down the
licence.
hearing now for 5 minutes. We're going to meet outside. Thank you very much. We will be back at 11:30. the camera on? Thank you. Just for clarity, I'd like to mention that I use my phone and this to deliver insulin. So I am not on the phone with anybody else. I'm a diabetic, and that's what I do. I check my blood sugar and I deliver insulin. So thank you very much. We want to make it abundantly clear that the committee has not made a decision and will not do so until all the evidence has been heard and the hearing has closed. We are just fact-finding at the moment. The purpose of the draft conditions session also does not mean that the committee are minded to grant the application. Regardless of what decision the committee makes, its reasons will be set out in the full decision. Any of the parties will be able to appeal the full decision. So let's continue the hearing without needing to adjourn. This is being live streamed, and it would be helpful to continue the hearing without further ado. Thank you very much. Now, committee, do you have any more questions for the objector?
No, Chair.
No, Chair.
Thank you. Now, sorry. Yes, our legal officer has some questions for the objector.
Thank you, Chair. When you first started your submission, you talked, I didn't quite catch what you said about reserving parking bays. Can you just clarify that, please? Yes. Slowly, so I catch it this time.
I'm sorry, I didn't expect to speak again. I was trying to illustrate the character of the establishment, seeing as that it positioned itself as being incredibly mindful of the local community. And for about, I can't remember, it was about 6 months, they would put effectively velvet ropes on poles in public parking bays in front of the hotel.
Once they were open?
Whilst they were open, yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Once
during daytime hours,
okay.
from the, so that they effectively created a space at the front of the hotel for its own guests to have exclusive cars waiting and this sort of thing. And we complained, a number of us, I think, to the council, and I believe the council dealt with it because they stopped doing it, and one of the doormen said to me they'd been told they weren't allowed to do it anymore, and they would keep the pole on the rope just by the entrance and then put it out at certain times of the day to reserve the public parking bays.
So that's been resolved now, though, but there was an issue.
It's totally resolved, and I only mentioned it because of the narrative around we are so respectful and mindful of the local community. That's all we care about.
And also, I didn't quite catch, when you were asking earlier on about bar capacity, but not just seating bar capacity, I didn't quite catch what the guesstimated final number was.
I think the fire limit is not for me to answer, but what I heard was the fire limit was about 120.
Which is what you then referred to later on.
Which I then, because I believe eventually when pushed, Tarek, the manager, referenced 120, but I guess that's a matter of record because it's been recorded, but that's certainly what I heard.
But I also obviously heard that, generally speaking, there weren't people standing at the bars, and it was difficult if people were standing because they get in the waitress's way, and as a general rule, you have people seated. But I just wanted to make sure that I got all the information.
Can I, because one could impose a condition on the number of people in the bar, for example.
Okay, sorry. Mr. Thomas, do you want to say something?
I think the way that you described it, Chair, was the legal advisor was exactly right. We have a fire risk capacity of 132, including staff at the basement bar.
130?
132.
Including staff?
Including staff.
Just for the bar and...
Just for the not for the terrace. The terrace isn't included because it's got its own fire escape. So inside the fire risk capacity is 132, including staff. So the customer, whilst the fire risk assessment hasn't calculated the customer capacity, I would say it's no more than 120.
So 120 roughly minus staff?
Exclusive of staff.
Okay, 120 exclusive of staff. Okay.
And we have seating, and as you've heard, we don't have all of our patrons are are served by effectively waiter-waitress service. You can't go to the bar. We have a significant number of covers. Not everyone is seated.
But you don't have any conditions requiring, I mean, you can allow vertical drinking effectively because there's no conditions, but it's your choice to have everyone seated and served by waiter-waitress, if that's your preference.
There aren't quite enough seats to serve everyone by way of waiter-waitress service. Sorry, but by way of everyone being seated. So there are some people standing.
Some standing. Okay. Roughly how many-ish? Depends on a given night, I guess.
Well, on a busy night, and particularly if we've got a private event, it could be up to the maximum capacity of 120.
Okay, thank you.
But it depends on the nature of the night, nature of the function, etc.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Stolkin, your main concern is with the bar, not so much the restaurant, is that correct? Or is it both?
I'm sorry, I'm not used to this. No, my concern is the number of people who will be exiting the building at 1 o'clock in the morning, and whilst I understand that's conjecture, all of this is really conjecture. If it fulfills its potential, it will be people exiting from the restaurant and the bar.
Thank you, that clarifies that. And when you're talking about the smokers outside, my understanding is that the 10/15 smokers outside is physically outside the building, but I think were you talking about in the light well as well? You were just talking about outside.
Can I respond to that? Yes, no, I wasn't talking about the outside terrace, which is in effect is in the basement, the lower ground. It is, as I understand it, which was clarified, I think, by licensing, is that these are people who would be in the street. So it's 15 at the moment, could be in the street, smoking and chatting if they want to.
Thank you. That's questions for me for the moment. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions from the applicant?
No, Chair.
At this stage, I'd like to ask our legal advisor to deal with the draft conditions and any other queries she may have.
Thank you, Chair. Right, has everybody received this that was circulated last night? Okay. And obviously, earlier on, I just mentioned those additional thoughts for discussion. So, as the Chair mentioned, obviously, this just forms part of the licensing hearing. It doesn't mean it's going to be granted. It's just purely what we do, just so we can meet out any issues. So, obviously, we can't take away what they've got. So, but existing condition 17, I think you said you're agreeable, because I think Tariq's statement, I think you actually referenced reducing smokers to 10 outside after 11 p.m. Are you amenable to
yes.
17?
Yeah, so it would be, I mean, you can either have one condition or two conditions. I suppose there would be a new condition. So 17 would say limited to 15, and then you would have an additional condition which would say after 11 p.m. it would be 10.
Are you happy just with the wording combined into one condition, or you?
Yes. Yeah, no,
okay, so you're happy. Mr. Stolkin, do you have any comments on that condition?
I don't, because the bar's been so empty up till now. It really isn't. We have no way of knowing how that will be, but certainly the fewer the better. Okay,
and presumably, obviously, we're going to come to the bit about the door to the terrace area being closed. Obviously, smokers won't be able to go out there after 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. Smokers do smoke out there during the day, presumably, as well, on the terrace bit. Okay, thank you. Right, going on to the first additional condition, which was about the doors to the terrace. Obviously, as I mentioned, Ms Henshaw referenced 9, but then you've clarified wind down at 9, close at 10, or keeping it clear, and also shutting the windows and doors to that terrace subject to emergency access. Are you still sticking with 10, or are you amenable to 9?
10, please, and whichever wording that you think appropriate, but I thought something like the terrace and the door to the terrace shall close at 10 p.m, save for emergency.
Okay. Mr Stolkin, presumably you want 9 still, or do you have any comments on that?
My primary 9 would be excellent. My primary concern is what happens after 11 o'clock with people exiting.
Primary concern exiting. But obviously, having a condition will just kind of belts and brace it to make sure that obviously there is no extra noise as well
And I
from
think
that area.
with the live set DJ, clearly if the door is closed at 9 or 10, it will prevent the noise of that music spilling out and
Thank
disturbing local residents.
Thank you.
Of course, at the moment, the terrace can be used by members of the public till 11 and by residents and their guests actually 24 hours. So any such condition would actually be restricting the licence further. And
But you're happy for that?
yes.
Okay. Okay, so all time residents. Okay. Now, I mentioned, I mean, you said that the place isn't going to be a nightclub. I don't have wording to me, but are you happy with wording to the effect confirming that the premise, the lower ground floor area will not be used as a nightclub? If you
Yes.
can craft some wording. Would that provide some comfort?
Can I ask, what's the definition of a nightclub?
I don't have one off the top of my head, but I dealt with a condition for premises down Earls Court Road called Kung Fu. I think we put, I can't remember who was on that committee, but there was wording to that effect because that was a concern. It was going to be used as a karaoke bar, and it was concerned that it might become a nightclub. I'd have to go away and have a look.
I'm familiar with that establishment, ironically. I went to Stag Do there, but it was pretty boisterous. I think there's no point having conditions if there aren't clear definitions, because my definition of a nightclub would be, for example, that there would be people dancing in the basement to the DJ.
Can I just chip in here? They don't have dancing as regulated entertainment, do they,
No,
Sharon?
in fact, on the subject, well, firstly, dancing is no longer a license. Dancing has never been a licensable activity. The performance of dance, I think, is no longer a licensable activity either. If it helps, we're not that sort of place. We don't have a dance floor. In terms of DJ, I hope you don't mind me taking this opportunity just to correct something. There are two types of DJ. There is a nightclub type DJ experience where you've got somebody on the stage and doing all of that, and you've got a different type of DJ who's providing an ambient experience. Would you bear with me and just let Tarek explain what our DJ experience is? I think that might be helpful for you to understand in context why we're saying we're not a nightclub. With your leave, Chair, would that be okay? And we just explain what the DJ is. Thank you. Tarek?
So the curation of the DJs in the bar is very specific. It's a vinyl-only experience because it's associated with it being more of a craft and something tailored to the mood of the bar as opposed to just music which we play out loud from electronic sources. It's a kind of a lounge direction which is given to the DJs, funk, 70s, soul. It's something which makes you want to enjoy your evening and create an ambiance in the bar. It's not house, it's not electronic music, it's atmospheric, and it's a specific DNA which we curate with the DJs. I don't know if that provides any clarity, but hopefully it might.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Say this, and I hope it's helpful. We, of course, haven't applied for to extend regulated entertainment. There is no part of this application to extend regulated entertainment in the basement. So, for all intents and purposes, any entertainment in the basement after 11 o'clock, should you be minded to grant, has to be at a background ambient type level, so not nightclub type level.
Thank you.
I'm not sure whether the nightclub condition is required, bearing in mind we're not having regulated entertainment, but I leave that with you, Chair.
Ms Dybel, can you just check the Kung Fu licence to see the wording of that nightclub condition for me, and then we can just have a chat about it. Do you have something to say, Mr Stoggin?
Yeah, I just think in the real world, if there's, and by the way, the music is very loud on the Friday, you can hear it down the street when the doors open, and it's as described by the establishment, electronic music, speakeasy, which by the way, the origin of speakeasy is an illegal underground entertainment place, but anyway. It's just, if there's a DJ, live music of the type that I've heard, of course, it's quite difficult to stop people in the real world just moving around or having a little dance. And I'm not, as an objector, I'm not so concerned about whether people are dancing and what constitutes dancing. You don't need a dance floor to dance, you just need a great atmosphere and some people who've had a few drinks and are having a lovely time. My concern is if that vibe, that model, is perpetuated through to 1 o'clock in the morning, how the atmosphere, what it would be like at 1 o'clock in the morning if 120 people plus the restaurant exit into their cars. So I'm not, from an objector's point of view, personally, I'm not worried about the definition, because you're not going to stop people having a nice time from dancing to a DJ. If you put a DJ, you're asking people to dance, in my view.
I think some of the other objectors, I think they've referenced their concern about it becoming a nightclub or a destination venue.
I expressed the concern that it would become a nightclub vibe in the way that the Cost Hotel, who are operating this and who were carefully selected to do it as the partners, theirs is a nightclub vibe. It's similar, it's bigger, but it's similar table service, but you have lots of people dancing. That's the whole idea, to create a club atmosphere.
Ms. Dyball, are you in position to speak?
Regarding the condition that was put on Kung Fu, it was basically to ensure that the licensable activities would be ancillary to the main function of the premises as a restaurant. So that was the wording that was used. It didn't specifically even mention nightclub.
Was there any other conditions about not to be, maybe it's not Kung Fu, I'd have to go away and have a look because I can't remember off the top of my head. Was there another condition on Kung Fu? Was there, maybe it was another premises I'm thinking of?
That was the
Chair,
one.
sorry. What you could do is just replace the word, whichever the word was there, restaurant to hotel. So we of course are saying that the use of the basement remains ancillary to the use of the premises as a hotel. In fact, many of our hotel guests and their guests use it. So if that's a trite way of describing it.
Okay, we'll go away and have a think about that, but obviously...
But either way.
Just on the subject of Kung Fu, it is a restaurant. If that was the example, in this situation, the restaurant and bar are obviously separated by 4 floors, I believe. So the bar is completely self-contained.
Yes.
Just to be clear, because the establishment that you refer to, there's connectivity between the restaurant and the bar. The bar is completely it is an entity
on its own. Yes, it's on the lower ground floor and the restaurant's on the 6th floor. Okay, we've discussed. Now, what about, I mean, I know wouldn't ordinarily put this on, but I just want to moot it. Normally you do your own fire risk assessment, which is numbers. I mean, would you be willing to have a capacity limit condition for the lower ground floor bar, or would you rather keep that to the fire risk assessment for fluidity?
I think for fluidity we would like to keep it to the fire risk assessment, and there's lots of reasons for that. One being we might have a cocktail event down there, we might have a private party, so there will be occasions where the capacity has to be fluid.
Thank you. Now, at the outset, you've said that you wanted this to be a permanent licence for the reasons you've given. I just wanted to ask the question, just so it's out there. Would you be amenable to having a time-limited licence? As a committee, we cannot impose that. We can only request that.
Chair, the application is on the basis that any extension that you might grant is subject to planning, and we think it's a better way to do that rather than us having to come back and trouble each occasion. So no, we're not proposing that it's time limited, but the effect of it is that it is time limited if planning is not renewed in May.
Yeah, indirectly,
and that's
okay.
the protection.
And
in a way, that's the sort of duplication of regimes point as well.
Okay, and obviously the committee need to go away and consider whether to grant, whether to refuse, whether to grant with conditions, what hours to give. Obviously, Councillor Nur asked you about why you think, you're the exception to the midnight policy. So in terms of timings, I mean, if the councillors were minded to, grant the application to, midnight or 1 or whatever time they come to, what are your views? You've said that Thursday, Friday and Saturday are the busier days of the week. What are your views on 12 or 1 on those days and staying at 11 on the other days?
It's almost a sort of counter-intuitive problem that if something is quieter early in the week and doesn't cause a problem, then why not grant it? So if, for example, we've only got 40 people in the bar on a Monday evening, that's a good thing rather than a reason not to extend it, because we can obviously the quieter, the the quieter we are, the less reason there is not to grant it. The second point is that, of course, we have established that we can demonstrate that we can operate without nuisance until 1 a.m. We've had 17 tens. In those 17 tens, which were all till 1 a.m. or later, there was only one complaint, and that was at 11 o'clock in the evening, and it wasn't witnessed, and it wasn't substantiated. I think that the main difficulty of restricting it to Thursday, Friday, Saturday is at a hotel. Sometimes we get a private booking. Sometimes we will be called up on even a Sunday evening, say, can you do a BAFTA party, etc. So that would mean we'd have to apply for a temporary event notice, etc., etc. So as a hotel, we effectively risk assess and manage the events that we have. And to use your word, or your learned legal advisor's word, Chair, the fluidity would help us in terms of managing the functions that we have up to that ultimate terminal hour.
But just to confirm, today, I think Tarek said that Thursday, Friday and Saturday were generally the busiest to date. Obviously, you've only been operating since July, but I take that on board.
Yeah, generally busier, but we would like to provide a facility for locals to come and use somewhere which is a very sort of safe place later in the evening, even if it is on a Tuesday or Wednesday. Tarek, is there anything else you can add to that?
I think it's also the fact that as a hotel, it's nice for us to be able to provide a space for guests to use later in the evening because they would like it and they enjoy it. We have guests who pay a large amount of money to stay and enjoy the property, and it's nice for them to be able to have a drink later into the evening, even on a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday night, when there's an atmosphere in the bar which is provided by other people who are non-resident to the bar. So as a business model, to have a buzz in the bar, a quiet buzz in the bar, even on the quieter nights, is really important to the enjoyment of the property from resident and non-resident guests.
And so just one question for clarity. So hotel residents and their bona fide guests, do they continue using the bar area after the cut-off at present?
Yes, that's already permitted on the licence. And
how do you distinguish between do you know who's a hotel guest and who's not a hotel guest?
We know all of our guests extremely well. Tarek, how do you differentiate between the two?
Well, firstly, we really make an important point as part of our private house experience to know all of our guests by name. It's something which all the staff are trained to do. We have almost 3 staff to every guest in the hotel employed overall. But secondly, we ask guests, are you resident? And therefore, if they're not resident, then we don't serve them. And since the prime entry to the bar is via 2 Holbein Place, the door SAA staff and the hostess who's present there don't let people in if they're not resident after the license time. So you make sure, as it stands, that non-residents leave by the terminal hour that's currently permitted. Absolutely, yeah. Okay.
Mr. Skolkin, I'd like your comments on what we've been discussing.
I'm grateful. So firstly, there's quite a lot of conflation there. Just so we're clear, I believe I'm very grateful to your questions. Resident guests are allowed to drink till after 11 o'clock at the moment. So actually, sticking with an 11 o'clock license does not in any way tie the establishment's hands as far as its residents' guests are concerned. And I'm not sure that was totally clear to start off with.
Sorry, can you just repeat that bit? Sorry.
Yes, what I'm saying, tell me if I'm wrong, because you know the licensing, is that non-residents cannot consume alcohol in this premises at the moment after 11 o'clock. Residents can continue. So not granting the application will not impact on the hotel's ability to give its residents alcohol till early hours of the morning. So
it's just all about the non-residents, basically.
So yes, let's be clear. This is all about non-residents. Second piece of conflation, if you're a resident, you don't need to go out of the hotel and then come back in through either. You just go down into the bar. So it is non-residents who we're talking about in terms of the access to the establishment.
That will be the impact, because presumably the residents of the hotel will be staying in the hotel.
They
may
need to
dip in and out, but they...
Yes, but I understood what, respectively what Tarek just said, was that we know everybody. You don't really need to know them if they're staying, because they just go down in the lift, down the stairs. But anyway, my point is, for clarity, this isn't about residents. Residents can drink when they like.
Yes, exactly, because they're
Yeah.
currently
This is
allowed to do
about
that.
this is about the commercial advantage of pulling in non-residents. One other
Yes.
point: there was a little bit of conflation or implication. If we're having an event, somehow that's different to private event and won't cause noise when people leave. My comment would be, I think that's sort of irrelevant. If it's a private event to 1 o'clock, people will leave. Indeed, with an event, people tend to leave at the same time. There's less staggered dispersal, so I think events are actually more of a problem. Thank you.
Chair, I mean, in short on that point, what we say is that, of course, you'll look at that particular issue in terms of the hours throughout the week on the evidence.
Okay. And sorry, going back to Mr. Skolkin, when I was talking about, perhaps having reduced hours on the non-busier nights of the week, is that not really an issue for you? Is it just about dispersal? Would you prefer? Can I just have your comments on like Thursday, Friday, and Saturday being the later nights, and the other nights not being later nights?
Clearly, my position, and I assume it's the position of the residents who rejected, is that we would rather that there wasn't noise nuisance at 1 o'clock in the morning on any night. But if the evidence is that it's quiet on those nights and the licensing committee is minded to do something in between, then yes, I don't see why the applicant would object, given on the basis of their own evidence, it's very quiet anyway, Mondays to Thursdays. My fear, and the reason that they're quite doggedly trying to hold on to a 1 o'clock application on Monday to Thursday, is because it will become a destination, because there aren't other places to go in the area, and it will simply attract all those people who want to drink till 1 o'clock in the morning. But I absolutely, based on what their representative said, I would absolutely say, well, if it's quiet, then just have 11 o'clock Monday to Thursday. To be honest, we'll take what we can get, but we would really don't want to have noise at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Chair, what we say to that is that if it's quieter earlier in the week, that's not a reason to not grant the 1 a.m. In fact, that's almost a reason to grant it.
Thank you. That's, I think, all the conditions that I wanted to discuss. Do the committee, has anything kind of cropped up which they think should be conditioned? Or Mr. Stolkin, any else that's relevant condition-wise to this application that you want to discuss?
No, thank you very much.
Licensing.
Sorry, Chair.
Can you tell us, please, there is a nightclub on Sloane Square called Tantaria, and there is a nightclub on Kings Road called Raffles. And the Botanist, can you tell us what their license is, please? Which is not a nightclub.
The hours for the premises that are around Sloane Square are actually shown in the appendix.
Yes, I just wanted on the
The
film.
Botanist has an alcohol license until 1 a.m. on I believe it's the Friday and Saturday nights, and then Thursday night midnight, and the rest of the week 11:30. The Raffles, I believe that's quite a bit further down Kings Road, but I believe that has a 4 or 5 a.m. licence. I will just check that one for you. And what was the other premises?
Tantaria, which is on Sloane Square.
Tantaria. Is that the one is that in the basement of the hotel?
Yeah.
That has a 3 a.m.
3 a.m.
3 a.m. licence on Friday, Saturday, 2 a.m. Throughout the week. And I just need to check for Raffles.
And just whilst Ms. Daggel's doing that, Chair, of course our planning is 1 a.m. throughout the week.
Sorry?
The planning is 1 a.m. throughout the week. I know you understand.
For yours?
Yes.
Yes, I know. I was just wanting to show the context. Thank you. And have it on the screen. Okay. I'm happy with that. Mr. Scott, did you want to ask anything else?
Yeah, just to comment on those, Raffles is the other end of the King's Road effectively. On Tonteria, I think the key point, and the botanist only operates its license on Friday and Saturday. Anyone collecting from those can pull up on Sloane Square, use a main arterial road. They're busy roads and they pull up. The issue here is that this premises is going to draw traffic down a very quiet residential street. They're not comparable.
Thank you very much for your comments. Do our licensing officers have anything to add?
No, just to confirm that the licensing hours for raffles for the sale of alcohol until 4:30 during the week. It's 11 o'clock on Sunday.
Thank you very much. Do our governance officers have anything to add?
Nothing from us, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've reached the end of this meeting. The committee now has all the information needed, and we will retire to make our decision in private session. We will not announce the decision today. Instead, the hearing will be closed. A summary determination will be sent to the parties within 5 working days of today's hearing, and a full decision will follow as soon as possible thereafter. The time limit for appealing the decision will not commence until the full decision has been sent to the parties. Thank you all for your contributions, and thank you all for attending. The hearing is now closed.